As most of you Zelda fans are probably aware, Wind Waker isn't really known for its dungeons. I mean, it still beats Breath of the Wild's dungeons, but that's like saying Ocarina of Time is better than the CDI games. It's the most obvious statement ever. One of the temples in Wind Waker that I actually love to death is the Tower of the Gods. This dungeon is one of Zelda's finest, and it is so creative. Welcome to another episode of Temple by Temple, where I, Jickbean, take a look at the temples in the Legend of Zelda series. Today, we'll be taking a look at what I consider to be the best dungeon Wind Waker has to offer, being the Tower of the Gods. If you've never had the pleasure of experiencing one of these videos before, then let me go ahead and break down how things go around here. I'll talk about the entire lead up to the temple alongside anything inside I find important to talk about. After the temple is completed, I'll give it a standard tier list letter grade. I've also got the other Wind Waker videos and all my Temple by Temple videos linked below if you want to check them out after this one. Without any further ado, let's get right into the review and grading of the Tower of the Gods. Since we've gotten 2 out of the 3 goddess pearls we've been tasked with finding, it's time to try and track down the third and final one. According to the King of Red Lions, the last pearl should be found in the hands of Jabun, so we need to head on over to the Great Fish Isle in order to find him. On the downside though, it's not looking like Jabun is going to be here because things are looking a bit grim. All seems lost in the search for Jabun until our old pal Quill shows up. Jabun was originally here, but he had to flee due to the attacks from a shadow at the Forsaken Fortress. Apparently, Jabun has fled to Outside Island in a cave that's sealed by a mighty stone slab. Our old pirate pals had tried to break into the cave, but were unsuccessful, and they were last spotted on Windfall Island. Of course, that means that Windfall Island is going to be our next stop. I really love how the entire trip to Windfall has a thunderstorm as a backdrop. Adventure! Yeah! It makes for such an epic journey. As we approach the island, we'll notice Tetra's ship, but we don't need to go there, and instead we need to head on over to this little shack on the edge of the island. We can't use the front door, but luckily for us, there's a crawl space on the roof that we can use instead. Inside of the house, we get a classic Wind Waker cutscene where our old pirate pals are stealing some bombs from the sky they tied up. They plan on taking these bombs back to Outside Island in order to blow up that cave entrance that was talked about earlier. As they plan to take the bombs back to their ship, the crew convinces Tetra to wait until tomorrow before they set sail so that they can have a fun night at Windfall. As they're discussing this though, Tetra spots Link before definitively deciding on staying here. We also apparently need a password to get into the ship, which we overhear as Swabbies, which is gonna come in handy. Once they're all gone, we can start heading on over to the pirate ship. After telling Nico the password, we can get inside the ship. Nico is actually nice enough to treat us to one of his little mini games, which are always fun, with a prize at the end. For this challenge, we have to jump between lanterns on a time limit, and while this may seem a bit challenging, it's not too bad. Once we successfully make it to the other side, we can open up a chest to get a staple Zelda item, being bombs. In Wind Waker though, you can also use bombs as cannonballs on our ship, which is of course super fun. Well, now with the bombs acquired, we can start making our way on over to Outside Island. We actually have to go behind the island in order to find the cave entrance, and after a bunch of bombs we get to enter the cave. Inside is of course Jabul, but I have a question. How the heck did this dude even get into the cave? Jabul is one big fish, and that entrance was pretty small. The King of Red Lions and Jabul have a little conversation where our ship spends a decent bit just glazing Link. Jabul is then gracious enough to grant us with Nehru's Pearl, which is the third and final one we need. We also learn that apparently this thunderstorm was caused by Ganon as a curse he set upon us. On the bright side, at least we don't have to go inside Jabul's belly, or else I might have quit playing the game. Now with all 3 goddess pearls obtained, we have to go place them in some specific spots. We'll have to go to 3 different islands dubbed the Triangle Islands. The actual islands themselves don't really have much on them besides a statue that we'll need to place the pearl in. Once all of the pearls have been placed in the statues, they all explode into much prettier looking statues representing the goddesses. They shoot beams at each other and form a triforce in the water, causing a massive dungeon known as the Tower of the Gods to erect out of the water. The Tower of the Gods was placed by the gods of the ancient world so that they may test the courage of men. If we complete the trial, then we'll be recognized as a true hero and will be granted with the power to destroy great evil. With that, we can sail on over to and inside the Tower of the Gods. As always, let's start by talking about the dungeon theme. It's a really great theme that fits perfectly with the location. It feels so grand with high-pitched instruments and a low baritone voice. It really does feel like you're in some sacred temple made by beings up above. One thing that makes the Tower of the Gods super unique is that for the first little bit of the temple, you actually have to deal with the constant changing of water levels. I didn't expect to ever have the King of Red Lions join us for a dungeon, and it's really cool to see him here. We can start things off on the right side of the room where there's some statues we can move around. If we place one on this switch, a door opens to the next area. In here, there's a whopping 1 yellow choo-choo and a gap denying us access to the other side of the room. In the gap area though, there's some boxes and another switch that this time makes a cool looking rainbow bridge appear. However, there's still some rising water in this room, so you'll have to cross the bridge quickly or else it'll disappear. On the other side is a different looking statue that we can take back to the previous room. There's a little area that it fits perfectly in, and when placed lowers a gate to a new area. While we could travel over there is one little side room to explore first. When the water is lowered, we can enter through this door. In here, there's a bunch of yellow choo-choos who have an electric ability. The water also rises and lowers in this room, and there's a bunch of tiny areas we can reach using our bombs. There's not a whole lot in these little rooms, however behind one of them is a chest containing the dungeon map. Now we can head through the area we unlocked earlier. There's a door that's locked, but after moving 2 statues onto 2 separate switches, we can enter the room. This is one of my favorites in the dungeon. Of course, this room has rising water levels, but also a bunch of boxes you can move around. What you have to do is move all these boxes into the right places so that you can platform across them. You also can't really cheese this because you'll need to light one of these sticks on fire and transport it to the unlit torches. Once the torches are lit up, a chest appears containing a small key. I have to admit, I was a little confused on where to go after this. It didn't look like there were many places to go, but on the left side of the main room, there's actually some walls we can bomb, revealing a new area. There's 2 separate doors that we can go through, but let's start with the little puzzle. On the bottom floor, there's 2 unlit torches that we'll of course need to light. What can make this challenging though is that you have to look out for the rising water. Once the torches are lit, a chest spawns in containing a joy pendant. Well, let's move on to the top floor where we're greeted with a red bubble. There's also a chest in here containing the compass. Now I'm sure you noticed this giant eye in the room, but we can't do anything with that right now. Now we can go explore the room on the bottom floor. There's a statue that seems unreachable with the current state of the room, however if we defeat all the yellow choo-choos in the room, a rainbow staircase appears, allowing us to take the statue. We can take it all the way to the top floor of this area, where when placed in the correct spot, unlocks a new area. Unfortunately, we can't take the King of Red Lions with us, so we have to leave him behind. In this next room, there's a really annoying Beamos and a couple of rats. There's 3 different switches on the other side of the room that don't seem to do anything. If we bring 2 statues over and stand on one of the switches ourselves, that makes a bunch of platforms move, taking us up to a door. This next area is another very important room that we'll keep coming back to throughout the dungeon. There's a few separate doors in here, but we can only go through the one on the right at the moment. This is a pretty simple room with a moving platform and some yellow choo-choos. Through the next door, we come across yet another statue, but this one actually moves on its own. After you take him through most of the room, you'll have to pick him up and jump with him to continue backtracking. Yeah, I don't want to talk about this room. I may or may not have had a big stupid brain moment and couldn't figure out how to get him over here. Taking him through the next room isn't too challenging, and once we come back to this central room, the statue takes on a life of its own again and stays on a platform which spawns in some sort of stone with markings on it. This here teaches us a new song, being the command melody, which allows us to control these statues. This also unlocks the door to the next area where there's some red bubbles and something for us to use our grappling hook on. Using the grappling hook, we can reach a new area and there's yet another statue. There's seemingly no way to get the statue back to the central room, but using the button and the command melody, we can spawn in a rainbow bridge and make the statue cross it. In this room, there's yet another switch that opens up a new door. We'll then have to use our grappling hook to cross on over to it and enter a mini boss room. This right here is a dark nut and it's pretty fun to fight. The music here is also banging, making this mini boss feel like such an epic fight. You'll have to press A at the proper time in order to slowly chip off his armor. I heavily enjoy fighting dark nuts in this game, and this very first one we fight feels like a decent threat. Nonetheless though, once we take him down, a chest spawns in containing the item of this dungeon, the hero's bow. The bow is of course a staple item in Zelda, so it's nice to finally have it. Once we leave that room, there's an eye that we can shoot with our bow, causing some platforms to move around the room. We can then of course take the statue back to the central room, where the statue allows us to access a new room. The next area has got a bunch of keys flying around and 2 platforms that act like a scale. There's also a wall we can bomb that will of course take us to a new area. In here, there's even more statues, but at least these statues are pretty big. If you play the Wind's Requiem, a chest spawns in and the statues try to attack you. These guys are Armos Knights, and in order to defeat them, you have to throw bombs in their mouth whenever it's open. It's simple, but pretty fun. Once they're out of the way, you can get the chest and be granted with a treasure chart. Down here on the lower level, there's also another room we can explore where there's a bunch of moving platforms. On some of the platforms, there's eye switches that you can shoot to make those platforms move. Doing this, we can find a chest with a small key, however, that's not everything in here. After hitting another random eye switch, it'll spawn in a chest containing a joy pendant. Now comes the worst part of this room, being trying to get out of it. It's super tedious if you're dumb like me and don't use the Deku Leaf, but luckily if you just jump into the endless abyss, you'll spawn back at the entrance to the room. In the previous room with the scale-like platforms, we can throw some of these statues on one of them so that we can get to the other side. The next room has another moving statue, but it's blocked off by an electrical gate. Luckily, there's a box that we can use to get enough height to glide over the electrical gate, and we can call upon the statue. Man, it would have been nice if in that last room someone remembered to use the Deku Leaf. In order to get out though, we have to use the command melody and put the statue on the switch to turn off the electrical gate. As we take him back, the previous room has a Wizrobe in it this time, which can be easily taken out with our bow. We'll also have to once again throw a bunch of other statues on the scale to get our trusty statue to the other side. Once all the statues are in the central room, they make a little teleporter appear, but first there's a couple more things things to do. You remember that room with the eye in it in the first area? Well, actually, you probably don't because everyone's attention spans are getting ruined by short-form content, but I digress. If we hit this eye, the walls begin to open, revealing a chest that contains a treasure chart. Well, now we can take this little teleporter that of course takes us to a new room. There's a couple of BMOS in here and some switches that of course need some statues. Once all the switches are pressed down, the electrical gate opens, leading us to a chest containing the big key. Aren't you guys so proud of me for not making the same joke I did for the last 2 times I opened this chest? Anyways, the statues immediately start attacking us as their Armos. I don't really know why these specific statues decided to start attacking us at this exact moment, but hey, what are you gonna do? In order to defeat them, you have to hit them in the back, which is made easy by stunning them with your arrows. Once they're defeated, a door opens, taking us outside the dungeon. We need to take a staircase up, but there's a bunch of BMOS on the edge that try to stop that. Also, a Kargarak just kinda pulls up out of nowhere. You can shoot the BMOS with your bow and arrow, making them pretty ineffective. Just don't pay attention to how many hearts I've lost. Eventually, we'll reach the top of the staircase and enter the boss room. In this very ominous looking room, we hear a voice congratulating us on making it this far and asking us to accept one final challenge. Out of the walls pop 2 hands and a head as the boss of the Tower of the Gods, Godon the Great Arbiter, appears. This guy joins the iRock boss, Bongo Bongo, and a plethora of other Nintendo bosses where he's just a floating head and disembodied hands. Actually, Jickbean, Bongo Bongo doesn't have a head, it's actually his neck. Shut up! Thank you. Just like previous bosses, this guy's theme is pretty great. It feels like the final test of a huge gauntlet. You'll have to then use your bow and arrow to shoot at his hands and his eyes. If you're scared about running out of arrows, don't worry because Godon is nice enough to give you some arrows. After both of his eyes are shot out, his mouth will open, which you can then throw a bomb in and deal damage. His moveset quite obviously revolves a lot around just punching and smashing with his hands, but he'll also do this frame chunking attack where he just shoots fireballs out of his mouth. Seriously, what is it with the bosses in this game and just making the frame rate chunk like crazy? This especially shouldn't be a problem on the Wii U, but it's not really game breaking. After throwing a few bombs into Godon's mouth, he says that the pathway can now be opened and that we should be careful along the way. He's also nice enough to grant us with our patented heart container as we take a teleporter to a new area. There's a ladder in front of us, so of course we gotta climb it. We'll then notice a bell that we can use our grappling hook on in order to ring it. Doing so makes a new golden teleporter appear in the water. We're told by the King of Red Lions that this was only the beginning of our trial as we descend into the water. This next little bit won't really count towards the temple's grade, but we're gonna talk about it anyway. We descend all the way down to Hyrule Castle, but Link doesn't know that yet. We're then told that there's gonna be something absolutely awesome inside the castle, which I'm inclined to believe. Once we walk into the castle, everything seems to be frozen in place, and there's even a statue of some hero. Wonder who that is. We'll come across a little puzzle where we have to move these triangles into the right spots to form a Triforce. I really like this puzzle, but man does it boggle my mind. Once all 3 triangle pieces are in place, the statue of the hero suddenly moves, revealing a staircase. After taking the staircase, we can see the Master Sword, and of course you get a super cool cutscene when you pull it. I really like this version of the Master Sword, and I think it's so cool. When the Master Sword is pulled though, everything that was frozen in place starts to move, and the exit to the castle becomes blocked off. Also, look at Link's stupid face when he's holding the Master Sword. Why does he look like this? When we leave that room, we'll have to take out all the enemies in the main room. There's tons of Dark Nuts and Moblins scattered throughout the place. It can actually be pretty tough because these guys just love to jump Link. Okay, but honestly, there might be too many enemies in here. I get that you want to show off your brand new Master Sword, but my goodness do you fight these fellas for a while. Once they're all defeated though, we're finally able to exit Hyrule Castle. With the Master Sword acquired, we're now able to leave this place and finally go save our sister. And that's the end of the Tower of the Gods. This is by far my favorite dungeon so far, and from my research, most people seem to agree. Compared to the previous dungeons, this is a huge step above them with so many cool puzzles, fun bosses, and a unique atmosphere. Being able to just roam around a dungeon on a boat is super fun, and while the second half of the dungeon is pretty much just a huge escort mission, I found it pretty fun. Being able to finally use the hero's bow is great, and I like how it's used here. There are a couple of times in the dungeon where I really had to think, which I'm sure is not the case for most of you. Yes, I know I'm super dumb for not knowing that I could jump this gap while holding the statue. My bad. All in all, I think I'm gonna give this dungeon a grade of A. It's very unique, the bosses are super fun, and the whole concept of the dungeon is great. We'll see some other good dungeons later, but this is easily one of the best we've come across so far. Well, there you have it. That's the Tower of the Gods reviewed and graded. Next week, we'll be taking a look at everyone's favorite dungeon, the Forsaken Fortress, and oh boy is it a doozy. I want to thank you guys so much for the support on this series. It really means the world to me, and if you want to support the channel even further, then why not subscribe? Also, how's your guys' day going? I read all the comments on my videos and want to know how everyone's doing. Also, if you guys have any suggestions for how I can improve on videos, then please let me know. I'd love to improve on my video making, and any suggestions are greatly appreciated. After the Forsaken Fortress, we'll be taking a slight break from the series just so that I can celebrate the Mario Galaxy movie's release. Of course, I gotta thank the one and only Jickbean loyalist Allison Elden Ring for being a channel member. That's gonna do it for me. Have a phenomenal rest of your day, and we'll be seeing ya.